Hello again, everybody, and welcome to our Erev Pesach learning. Today, last year before Pesach, we learned about matzah, and that recording is on our hotline, 718-307-1100, and it's also on our website, energizedliving.org. Today, we're learning about freedom, and we're going to be basing it on a mimer. I don't have the mimer, a copy of it here now. We're not going to be doing it inside, so that's fine. If anybody wants, you can email to me and I will send you a copy of the mimer. We'll also post it along with the recording when we post the recording, Emir Hashem, online. So, but for anyone who could learn, I didn't copy it because I realized I wasn't planning on doing it inside. I was just gonna kind of base it off it. But I know that for anyone who could learn text, it actually makes a very big difference if you could learn it inside. So it's Kimeit Seischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim Arenu Neflois Tafshin Membeis. Okay, so it's all about freedom and how we could experience freedom in our practical lives. Personally, when I think about freedom, I think about the story that comes up for me in my mind is the story of Reb Mendel Futterfass, and I'm sure I said it 100 times in this group. I apologize. He was arrested for the crime of perpetuating Yiddishkeit, keeping Jewish life alive in communist Russia. He spent, I think, 14 years in Siberian labor camps and prisons, and it's mind-boggling. It's hard to imagine what that could be like. But when he was freed from prison, he told many, many stories about his time in the Russian gulags, and that's what he did for the rest of his life. He verbringt, he was a mashpia, he was such an inspiration. And there's a book called Reb Mendel, which contains a lot of his stories that he often told. And here is one of them. And I know that if you've heard me before, you've heard it again, but I think it is the kind of message that we could afford to hear again. So he said that once all the prisoners were sitting around and bemoaning the loss of the lives that they once had. One person said, I was the head of a hospital, so many doctors and nurses worked under me, and now I'm a nothing. Another person said, I was the editor of a big newspaper. Millions of people used to read every single line that I wrote. With one stroke of my pen, I made such a huge difference, and now I'm not making any difference at all. And on it went. Every person shared their own loss, their own story, their own devastation, and their own bitterness. And finally, one of them turned to Reb Mendel and said, what about you? You're always so happy. Why are you never bitter and broken? Didn't you lose anything? You probably didn't lose anything. You probably were nothing and a nobody before. So when you were thrown into prison, you didn't lose anything. Now, Reb Mendel had a very beautiful family, a loving family, had a wife and children who, Baruch Hashem, made it out of Russia before he was imprisoned, and they were waiting for him to be freed. He was also very successful. He was blessed with success in everything that he did. Before he was imprisoned, he engaged in business. And he was actually one of the financial supporters of the underground yeshivas. So physically, he lost a lot. He lost much more than his business or his career or his position. He lost his family. He lost his relationship with his community, with his Rebbe. He lost his life. And yet Reb Mendel said none of this. When he was asked, so what did you lose? And why are you always happy? He said none of this. When the prisoners looked at him and said, why aren't you sad? Reb Mendel said, before I went to prison, I was a servant of Hashem. And now I am still a servant of Hashem. And that was his answer. Same work, same mission, same career, same status, same value, same respectability. He didn't lose anything. Just the technicalities are different. The location is different. The space in which I am serving Hashem is different. But my mission, my career, it's the same. My life, my soul is complete. They could take away the external stuff. They could take away the conditions, the circumstances, the situation, but they could never take away my identity, my soul, myself, my being a servant of Hashem. And I think to me, that is the image. That's the poster child. I could use that word. That's the poster that best describes freedom, because what is freedom? Instinctively, we think of freedom as the ability to do whatever we want. If you could do whatever you want, then you're free, right? If I could do whatever I want, then I'm free. But if we each did everything we wanted to do, we would be slaves to our desires, and we would have a lot of chaos in this world, which we do, right? We all experience people in our lives in situations where like people are just doing whatever blank they want, and it's a mess. And they're even hurting themselves. And we hurt ourselves when we do. But if I eat everything I want, in a certain sense, I'm free. But in a certain sense, I'm a slave because it's so unhealthy for me to eat whatever I want, right? And that makes me a slave to my desires when I do that. So if we're forced to obey our impulses, our instincts, our habits, or our moods, that's not freedom. That is a deep, profound slavery. Freedom does not look like that. Now, some people describe freedom as not having any responsibilities. I'm sure you can relate to that. I certainly relate to that. Freedom of not having any responsibilities. You wake up and you don't have anything to do, nowhere to go. Nobody's waiting for you. Nobody's pulling at your skirt. Nobody's waiting for a response, this, that. It sounds fantastic. But really, every relationship comes with responsibilities. There's no such thing as a relationship, a connection that is free of responsibility. And if we have no relationships, we're alone in this world. And that's a very limiting life. That's a whole new level of slavery to loneliness. We're stuck in our own selves without love, without connection, and with just ourselves. And that cannot either be what freedom looks like. So what is true freedom? Freedom is when we're able to express our deepest selves and when we're one with that, when we could align ourselves on all levels, body, soul, reality could be all in harmony with each other. Freedom is the unleashing of our neshama, the actual part of Hashem within us. It's being able to live from the place of our neshama, the place within us that is infinite, unconditionally respectable, worthy, and untouchable. And maybe that's what Reb Mendel was describing when he said, I was an Eved Hashem before, I was a servant of Hashem before, and I am a servant of Hashem now, and nothing changed. Why is that an expression of true freedom? Because we all have that space inside of ourselves that has that clarity, that has that clarity, that has that understanding, the vision of ourselves as a carrier of Hashem's light. We have that, I'm here in this world to be a carrier of Hashem's light, to carry Hashem's light wherever Hashem wants me to shine his light. We can relate to that on an intellectual level. We can relate to that on some level in our minds and our hearts. We have that space, that truth, that clarity inside of us. But then we have a lot of resistance to that also. We have resistance that doesn't let us be the person that we want to be. Like there's a place in my mind that says, maybe I'm supposed to be happy right now, let's say. Because really, obviously, if this is my situation, then this is what Hashem wants me to be. This is where Hashem wants me to be. And it's okay, it's good. And all I have to do is show up and do my best and give it my best shot. But then I have resistance inside of me that says, no, I don't like this. And that resistance doesn't let me be free. So let's say in Reb Mendel's life, of course, from the perspective of his neshama, his mission in life, like every Jewish person's mission in life, is the same, no matter where, what, when, how, or why. Our mission in life is the same. But it would have made a lot of sense for him to resist that perspective, that attitude. It would have made a lot of sense for him to say, no way, I have a different story. I have a different idea of how I want my life to look, or how my life should look. This is not normal. It's not supposed to look like this. And with that, he would definitely be sad, and he would not feel free. He would feel stuck. He would feel confined to his imprisonment, and he would be bitter, and he would feel lost. But he was a Beinoni, and his mind and heart and body did not resist his neshama's perspective, or rather, when he felt that resistance, he dealt with it, he overcame it. And so he experienced freedom. He really was free, not just in his neshama, but in his whole heart and in his whole body. And I think all of us can relate to having those moments of freedom, moments when our neshama is free, moments when our mind and heart and body are not resisting our neshama, moments when we have that clarity, when we could touch it and taste it and feel it and really live with it in our lives, when we feel connected with Hashem, with our infinite source of goodness, of dignity, of strength and courage. And those are the moments when we don't feel alone and we don't feel anxious. We feel calm, we feel secure. We feel like we're in Hashem's protective embrace. We feel Hashem with us and within us. And those are our moments of freedom. Those are our moments of freedom. And it's so good to notice those moments, because the minute you could note, when we notice a moment like that, we'll be like, okay, so how do I stretch that? What led me to experience that or to create that? And how can I stretch it so that I can experience more freedom in my life? Vashkacha Pratis, today someone showed me a letter of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that the Rebbe wrote on Erev Pesach in 1962, I think. The letter is addressed to everyone. And in that letter, Tafshin Chaf Beis is 1962. Yeah, 1962, I think. And that letter, the Rebbe says that it's not enough for our neshama to be free. Our bodies also have to be free. And we also need to be able to experience freedom in our physical lives. And that's what we're celebrating on Pesach. True freedom and the ability to bring that true freedom everywhere in our lives. A freedom that begins with our neshama, because that's our inner source, our wellspring of freedom. It's our wellspring of health, of sanity, of serenity, of connection, of oneness. But we want to bring that into our bodies, into our minds, into our hearts, and everything about our physical lives. And in the story of Reb Mendel, he eventually experienced an even more complete freedom when Hashem saved him from that terrible imprisonment that he was suffering from. Hashem enabled him to be freed miraculously and leave communist Russia behind and live the rest of his life together, reunited with his family, with his community, and live the beautiful life that he had always, that had seemed only a distant dream. Our part is to unleash our neshama within our bodies and within the world around us, within our realities, within our hearts and minds. And Hashem does the rest. Hashem literally does the rest. That's Hashem's part. Hashem gives us complete freedom. May we see that freedom very, very soon. But tonight, let's talk about how do we do our part? How can we invite actual freedom into our hearts, not just from our neshama, because we know our neshama is free, but how do we make our bodies free? How can we experience freedom for real, not just with our neshama, but also within our physical human lives in our real world? And it's a very big question, because I don't know about you, but for me, my resistance is very real. It's very thick. It's very strong. We have real emotions and real desires and habits that get in our way of being free. Our neshama wants us to experience our connection with Hashem and our oneness and our real freedom, not to need anything, to be dependent on any habit or any substance or any words, and like all the stuff that we use, both to as because we feel compelled, because we feel like we need it, and also because we feel like we're dependent on it, like as a habit and as a dependency. But we have that Pare's voice in our mind that says, what Hashem, where Hashem, when Hashem, what are you talking about? Get real. This is 2022, right? That's our attachment to our unhealthiness that says, I can't change. My unhealthiness is the real me. But there's nothing else. There is nothing else. Our neshama wants us to feel Hashem's presence. Our neshama wants us to feel our dignity, our freedom, our ability to live this moment without needing anything that's not good for us, without being dependent on any power other than Hashem, right? But we have lots of resistance. We have those the habits and the behaviors and the compulsions and the emotional wounds that we always talk about. And we also have very painful current, present realities that tell us different kinds of stories. And it's just plainly hard to feel that freedom of our neshama. It's hard to get past that resistance. So how can we do it? And today we're going to answer this with a mimer, which means we're going to take a little journey with a completely different question, and then we'll come back to this. And I hope that I am not kidding myself that we can do this all in one night. Okay, and again, for anyone who wants to learn the actual text of the mimer for a richer learning experience, it's called Ki Meitzeis Chama Eretz Mitzrayim Aren Neflois Tafshin Mem Beis. It's going to be linked in the notes on the website. and wherever this recording is posted. Okay, the mimer begins with a pasuk in Micha, in the Navi Micha, that says, "Ki meitzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu neflos." As in the days that you left Mitzrayim, Hashem tells us, just as in the days when you went out of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders. And we have two questions about these words. The first question is, when did we go out of Mitzrayim? When did we go out of Mitzrayim? Anybody? Somebody? Everybody? We went out of Mitzrayim on which day? We went out of Mitzrayim in one day, right? We went out of Mitzrayim on the first night of Pesach, on the 15th, on the eve of the 15th day of Pesach, of Nisan. Imagine Pesach, 15 days. 15th day of Nisan. There were other journeys and travels after we went out of Mitzrayim, but we went out of Mitzrayim in one day. In fact, in Parshas Bay, when Hashem tells us to remember that we went out of Mitzrayim, Hashem says, Zachar es hayom hazeh asher yotzeisem miMitzrayim. Remember this day when you went out of Mitzrayim. This day, the day we went out of Mitzrayim was one day. And if we went out of Mitzrayim in one day, why does the Navi refer to our freedom from Mitzrayim as something that happened over multiple days? Ki yemei tzeischa, as in the days, it's a plural word, the days. So we went out of Mitzrayim in one day. Why is the Navi using a plural word to refer to our exodus from Mitzrayim, our freedom or liberation from Mitzrayim, as if it happened over multiple days? Okay, that's the first question. Why is Ki Yemei Tzeischa, why is our Yetzias Mitzrayim, our freedom from Mitzrayim, referred to as something that happened over multiple days when we know very clearly that it happened in one day? Here's another question that we have about these words. When we compare one good thing to another good thing, we're implying that the second thing is almost as good as the first one. We had this with Purim and Kippur. If I am planning a trip with my family and I want to get everybody very excited about the trip, I might say, remember that incredible, fantastic trip that we took as a family a few years ago, right? This trip is going to be exactly like that. Now, when I say that, I'm saying that because the trip we took a few years ago was really fun and special and meaningful, and everyone remembers it. So now we know and we hope that this one will be as good. Right? Remember one time you went into Mitzrayim? That's how good it's going to be now. Really? No. I hope it's going to be much better, right? If we apply this idea to the Geula, that's kind of disappointing, isn't it? Very disappointing, because the Geula we are waiting for has to be, after all these years, it better be better than the Geula of Mitzrayim. It better be so much better than the Geula from Mitzrayim, and it will be. First of all, it's going to be complete. That's one huge difference. The Geula from Mitzrayim wasn't complete. We had Geulas after that. This Geula that we are in the process of transitioning into there will be no more Geulas after that ever. So why would we compare this Geula to the past when the past was so limited to compare to the Geula we are waiting for? So there's another way to translate this pasuk. And in the first translation, we said, remember the past, that's how good it's going to be now, right? Remember, remember the days I went out of Mitzrayim, I read in the place, that's how I'm going to show you wonders now too. But there's another way to translate this pasuk, which completely changes the meaning. And that is, remember the miracles of Mitzrayim? How fantastic that was? You thought that was something? You thought those were miracles? That was nothing compared to what's going to happen now. He made says, as in the days you went out of Mitzrayim, now it's going to be our enu niflois. Hashem says, I will show you wonders. They'll be so wondrous that they will be, compared to them, the Gauls Mitzrayim will not be considered wondrous at all. That will be nothing compared to the miracles and amazing wonders that we will have in our Geula. So that's the second translation of these words. And that's really true. The exposure of Hashem's light in this world that happened on Pesach was tremendous. There was an incredibly rich Gilui Elikus, a revelation of Hashem's presence here in this world. And that's what we experience every year on the Seder night. That's the energy, the empowerment that gets absorbed in our matzah, the unleashing of a tremendous spiritual energy of Hashem's revealed presence here in this world, it gets absorbed into our matzah. That's what we eat on Pesach. And that's what makes our matzah an amuna vitamin. That's what we learned last year. We talked about it at length last year, right? It's an amuna vitamin because our matzah absorbs the ruchnius energy of Hashem's immense, beautiful, glorious revelation on the Seder night, the night that we went out of Mitzrayim. And yet, all of that greatness that happened at that time when we went out of Mitzrayim, it's still nothing compared to what will be when Mashiach comes. And in the Mimer, there's an elaborate explanation according to the Zohar and different quotes that prove that when Mashiach comes, there will be so much more of Hashem's revealed presence. And the Navi Yeshayahu tells us about the days of Mashiach, there will be no more hiddenness whatsoever. Nothing will eclipse Hashem's glory. Hashem will be completely revealed in his full-fledged glory. There's not going to be any more hiddenness. Nothing's going to be held back. So if there's going to be so much awesomeness during the Geula that we are waiting for right now, then the question becomes, why are we even mentioning Yetzias Mitzrayim in the same sentence? Why even mention it? Why are we even including and referencing Yemeitzeis Chama Mitzrayim in the story of Geula? Where does it even come in? It's so different. It's so much better. Why bother comparing? Why are we even establishing a connection? And the answer is that there's something about Yetzias Mitzrayim that is so precious and so meaningful and valuable that we will want to hold on to it, and we will need to hold on to it, and we will hold on to it even in the final Geula. And soon we're going to discover what that is, what that preciousness is. First of all, Yetzias Mitzrayim opened the door to the possibility of all and every Geula. When we were freed on the Seder night, and this is the energy that we're about to celebrate in a couple of weeks, but I hope Mashiach comes way before then, not just to save us from our cleaning or the work of preparing for Pesach, because I think when Mashiach comes, we're going to have we're still going to have a lot of work to do. Imagine all this carbon Pesach and figuring out all the arrangements and all the new halachas that we're going to have to learn. There's a lot to do when Mashiach comes. So it's not about saving us from work. It's just saving us from gullus. Okay, we want to be one with Hashem. We want to dalai gullus. We want to be done with this gullus and the chaos and confusion and the death and destruction. It's enough. It's really enough. So Yetzias Mitzrayim that night opened the door to the possibility of all and every Geula. Geula is freedom. Freedom is when, like we said before, when there's complete oneness between our soul, our body, our mind, our heart, and our realities, our relationships, our situation, the way we engage with our lives. It's when our hearts, our minds, and bodies have no resistance to our soul, or at least when our soul knows how to get past that resistance and there's a flow. The light of our soul can flow through our entire being and into our lives and our relationships and everything we do. And we experience the taste of this at Har Sinai. When we stood at Har Sinai and received the Torah, that's when we experienced the taste of this ultimate freedom. At that time of Matan Torah, at that time, Hashem's light was so completely present within the world. Hashem literally came down by Yered Hashem. Hashem came down, Hashem descended into this world. It was a tremendous revelation of Hashem's presence. And we felt one in that clarity, in that light, we had absolute clarity. We felt one with Hashem, and there was no resistance because all the resistance melted away in the face of Hashem's actual presence. There was no resistance anymore. It was immediate. It was like a major light turning on. And in the light, all the darkness, all the resistance faded away. This awesome revelation, this experience of complete oneness with Hashem, that complete Cheirus, complete freedom that we experienced at Matan Torah was temporary. Because right after Matan Torah, the resistance came back and they were able to do Chet HaEgel. The fears, the anxieties, the sense of loss, the sense of disconnection came right back. And that's because it was a temporary experience. It was an experience that came and went. When Mashiach comes, this clarity, the light will shine forever. It will never go dark again. We'll never lose that clarity. The clarity And the loss of our resistance, in other words, our complete freedom, will be permanent. And when did it all begin? It all began at it all began on this night when we left Mitzrayim. The unleashing of light that made all of this possible, Matan Torah and our Geula, began at Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's where it all began. That's where we got the gift of freedom. What's the gift of freedom? The empowerment to push past that resistance, the possibility to be free, the possibility for the resistance to melt away, or the possibility for the light of our neshama to flow into our lives, into our minds, into our hearts, into our relationships, into our challenges with no resistance. To be able, that's what we got at that's the gift of freedom that we're celebrating on Pesach night. The gift of being able to be one and create that sense of oneness, to feel that sense of oneness between our body and our soul and our creator and the world around us, and get past that resistance. Since that time, nothing physical could ever get in the way of Hashem's presence and Hashem's will. Our mind and our heart and our body and the world itself could present itself as resistance to Hashem's reality, but it cannot actually be a resistance. The minute, in other words, freedom is possible. We could push past the resistance as hard as it may be, as difficult as it may be, as much as it feels like Kriyas Yamsuf, but we could do it. We could push past that resistance. Hashem made it possible. And we could experience a connection with Hashem. And that's why we all have those moments when we did that. And we want to stretch those moments. But the possibility to do that work, the strength to do it, the empowerment to do that, that's what we get. That's the gift of Cheiruseinu and the new energy that we get on Pesach. And that's why the Pasuk uses a plural word to describe the one event of Geula of the Geula from Mitzrayim. Yes, we went out of Mitzrayim in just one day, but ever since that day, we still needed to do the work of pushing past the resistance to Hashem's presence and reaching for oneness with Hashem. When Mashiach comes, we're going to look back at our whole long journey, our whole long trip throughout these years, and we're going to see that every single day was another day in which we went out of Mitzrayim. They were all different days. We had happy days and sad days, painful days and joyous days, days of suffering and days of celebration in our own lives, personally and collectively as a klal, as a nation, as a people. We had terrible times and joyful times. And yet each and every day had one thing in common. Every single day is another day in which we went out of Mitzrayim. What does it mean that we went out of Mitzrayim? We let go of another layer of resistance, another layer of concealment to Hashem's presence. So it started in one day, it started on the night of Pesach, but it continued throughout history. And in our lives, every single day, we are empowered and charged with the mission to keep going out of Mitzrayim, to keep reaching for freedom, to keep pushing past that resistance to the clarity of Hashem's presence, to the elevation, to the oneness and connection of Hashem's absolute truth. And today, we're going out of a whole new level of Mitzrayim. Right now, all the work that we did throughout the generations, we're finally reaching the ultimate and complete Geula. But every single day, it's a whole new level of that. Collectively, we're there. Collectively, we're already there. But even today, the fact that this day Mashiach didn't come yet means that this was a day in which we went out of yet another layer of Mitzrayim. And that's why he made Seischa Me'eres Mitzrayim. I read in a place, it's considered, we count this as a plural day because when Mashiach comes and Hashem is gonna show us wonders, we're gonna be carrying all these days of work that we did to go out of Mitzrayim. It didn't just happen once. It began once and it continued and continues every single day we go out of Mitzrayim. We do that work. What does the work actually look like? The Mimer spells it out very, very clearly. Steps that we can take to experience real freedom in our lives with all the chaos and the uncertainty and the anxiety that we feel that surrounds us and that we feel inside of us. How can we let our soul be free? How can we actually experience that oneness, that clarity, that connection within our real practical lives? So the Mimer tells us one thing that we could do at a set time every day. And then there's another thing, a two-step process that we could do, that we need to do at all times. The one thing we do every day is we say Shema. Saying Shema is a moment in which we literally could go out of Gullus. Why? Because Gullus is Hashem's hiddenness. Gullus is that state where Hashem is hidden and it seems like there are other powers controlling us. Gullus is when we feel dependent on those substances that we use, on the food, on the music, on the reading, on the news, on the compulsive behaviors, whatever it is, on the shopping, on the cooking, on the cleaning, on the having things and more things, whatever each of us does to numb our pain or just out of habit and dependency to climb into a different reality so that we don't have to deal with our actual reality, right? Those things that's all gullus. It's an illusion that these things have real power, that these habits have real power, or that these substances and things have real power for us. And so every day we say Shema. That is an act of going out of Mitzrayim. If we do it right, and we could do it right, we each could do it right. What's the Shema? In the words of the Shema, what are we doing? We are affirming and connecting and coming clean, like aligning ourselves with the truth of Hashem's exclusive power. That's what the Shema is about. Shema is listen, pay attention. Yisrael, you are a Yisrael. You are a Sar Kel. That's you. The master within you is your neshama within you is your master. Your Sar is your Kel. That's your real master. And Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem is our power. And there's no other. Hashem Echad, there is no other. And we are one with Hashem. And we're never separate from Hashem. You know, my brother-in-law experienced a story. He should have a refuah shalema. Shalom Binyamin ben Leah should have a complete refuah. Beyond his best dreams and his family's best dreams, a complete, absolute refuah. Shalom Binyamin ben Leah. He had a interesting story that just reminds me of Hashem's exclusive power. He had a surgery, and while they were intubating him, they just damaged his vocal cords. And that is a very big tragedy for him because he's a gifted teacher. And to not have a voice it's like cutting off chas v'shalom his right arm. And for any person it would be, but especially for somebody whose life revolves around his ability to speak. And so he went on Friday to a top specialist in Manhattan who said, you'll need surgery, and even with surgery, you will never be able to get your voice back the way, in a healthy, functioning way. And he was devastated, he was heartbroken. But then he remembered that, you know what, the doctor is not Hashem, and Hashem could do anything. And he really placed his trust in Hashem. And 2 days ago, he woke up with his voice fully restored and having had no surgery. Hashem, I asked my husband, what? How did that happen? He said, what do you mean? Hashem took away his voice and Hashem gave it back. Hashem didn't need the doctor. For whatever reason, he had to go through that trauma of losing it, but Hashem gave it back completely without the surgery. So really, our power is nothing and no one but Hashem. And when we say Shema, we remember that there is only Hashem and no other powers. And remembering that makes us free. It really makes us free. The food doesn't have a power on me. The person doesn't have power on me. The situation doesn't have power on me. People's opinions don't have power on me. What they say, what they think, what they're gonna think, what I look like, who cares? None of it has any power on me whatsoever. Only Hashem has power. He's in charge, he's in control. And recognizing that and being present with that makes us free. Because we're not slaves to our habits, our moods, our desires, our compulsions, other people's behaviors, other people's opinions, nothing. We're slaves to nothing and nobody. We're free to express our deepest selves, our neshama, which is an actual part of Hashem. So that's one thing we could do every day. Saying Shema every day strengthens our freedom. And that's why, by the way, Kriya Shema ends off with recalling Yetzias Mitzrayim, because that is the time of the day when we go out of Mitzrayim on a physical level, on a spiritual level, and also on a physical level. We go out of Mitzrayim by saying Shema. And there's something else that we could do. It's a two-step process called Iskafia and Ishapcha, resistance and transformation. I'm going to go through this very, very quickly because we're running out of time. In a nutshell, Iskafia is when we resist the resistance. Iskafia is resisting the resistance to our neshama. We push past it. Let's say we want to say Shema. Let's say I want to do a mitzvah. Or let's say I want to stay away from unhealthy food. I want to stay away from unhealthy browsing of the internet, or unhealthy reading of certain materials, or unhealthy watching certain things. I want to say some tehillim, right? All these things. I want to exercise. I want to reach out and make an important phone call. Then we have a resistance. Okay, I'm not in the mood. I don't feel like it. I have 100 reasons why I shouldn't do it. I'm not gonna be comfortable. 100 reasons for everything good thing that I want to do. I have 100 reasons why I shouldn't do it. That's my inner resistance. Okay, doing that thing is in my best interest, and it's my deeper truth, and I know it. Iskafia is when I look at my resistance and we say, sorry, I got no time for you. I got no time for you. Talk to me later. I'm not even talking to you now. I'm just going to do the thing I want to do. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm not going to wait till I feel like it. I'm not going to wait till I get my inner resistance resolved, have a conversation with it. It's not happening. Someone told me of a story of how they were fighting with their Yetzer Hara. They wanted to get up in the morning, and they said, I should get up on time. I set my alarm clock for 6 o'clock. I should get up at 6:01. I should be up and out. But then they had this idea in their head that maybe they shouldn't. And then they're like, no, that's my Yetzer Hara. You think you want to stay in bed? No, it's the right thing to get up on time. And then there was that resistance, and then there was the pushback, and there was a fight. And this person said, well, after about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, my neshama finally won. It took 5 hours, or how many hours it took, 6 hours, but I won. That's not iskafia. That is getting embroiled in an unhealthy dialogue. That's called getting sucked into the Yetzer Hara, getting sucked into the resistance. Iskafia is 6 o'clock, I decided I'm waking up. 6:01, I just do it, regardless of if I feel like it. I'm not going to wait till I feel like it. I don't have to have that argument with myself, because there's no argument, there's no discussion. I say, Hashem, help me, because I'm doing this for you and not for anyone else. And I'm done. There's no conversation. I don't allow myself the luxury of engaging in conversation. That is iskafia. That's iskafia. And that's, after we do that, that's the first level of getting past our resistance. When we don't deal with our resistance, we just hold on tightly to Hashem, and we say, I'm counting on you, Hashem, get me through this. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm not talking to myself even. I'm not waiting till I convince myself that this is the right thing to do, because I'm not going to feel like it. And I know I'm not going to feel like it. So I'm just going to push past that resistance. That's iskafia. After we push ourselves or force ourselves to do the right thing, then we could experience something that's called ishapcha, transformation. We could talk to our inner resistance and bring it on board. We can talk to that inner energy that has this boundless energy that wants to do something and wants to fight and wants to push and wants to, or wants to be lazy, or wants, whatever it is. Talk to that energy and bring it on board. Hashem is good. Let's align with it. Let's do this right. It's good for us. And of course, when we get our inner resistance on board, whoo, that's an entirely elevated level of freedom. When we say with our whole inner energy, because when we're pushing past our resistance, it's kind of like we're doing the right thing, but our bodies are kind of schlepping along like an unwilling passenger in the car that we are driving. But once we can get our inner resistance on board, in a moment of clarity, in a moment of calm, in a moment when the resistance is not loud, so loud that we can, and maybe it's not the moment of actual action. It's a farbrengen, it's a conversation like we're having right now. It's a reflection at night in our beds, or while we're taking a walk with ourselves, washing dishes, in a moment of calm, of introspection, of reflection, when we really talk to ourselves and talk to our inner resistance and allow ourselves to be convinced that this is good and that this is what we want, that's when we get a whole new energy attached. Then it's not like our mind is running to do the right thing and our body is coming along like an unwilling passenger. Our whole selves, with our whole energy, with our whole passion, with our whole forcefulness comes along. And that is a whole different level. Now, the first one is connected, and the Mimer goes on to explain that Ishapcha was what happened. First of all, these two processes, this two-part process, we do every single day. We wake up in the morning, and the Mimer says, in order to get out of bed, you need iskafia. Right in the morning, to start the day, you start off with iskafia. You're empty, you have no passion, you have no energy. You just have to get going. That's the beginning of the day, iskafia. And then through davening, through the work, through doing the right things and going about your day. And once you're well into your day, then you could experience ishapcha, that transformation where your whole body is on board. Someone once told me they do this. She said, when I have an argument with myself about getting out of bed, I say, okay, first get out of bed, have the argument. Don't have the argument while your head is on your pillow. Have the argument after Negavasser, after Maidani, after Negavasser, after you're standing in the middle of your room, upright. Now have that conversation about whether or not you should stay in bed. Now, sometimes it won't work. You'll just get right back into bed. Maybe you need to get back into bed. I'm that person who says, maybe you do need a little bit more sleep. But that's not the point. The point is that every single day, we need to start the day with iskafia. And we need to expect that we're not going to feel like it. And then we move in as we're going through the day, and we can experience more of ishapcha. That's, the Mimer says, every single day. But collectively, globally, Yetzias Mitzrayim, the first part of our global day in the life of our people, Yetzias Mitzrayim was one big act of iskafia. That's what, because from Mitzrayim we ran. It says, Ki barach ha'am, the nation ran. We literally had to run away from ourselves. We were so entrenched. We were enmeshed in the Gullus culture, in the culture of Mitzrayim. Hashem couldn't wait until we felt like it. We couldn't wait until we felt like it. We had to run. We had to push past our inner resistance. We picked up and left in a hurry. It had to be dafka bichi pazai, in a hurry, running away from our inner power, running away from our inner resistance, not giving ourselves a chance to get stuck in a conversation that we might lose. We couldn't do that. We couldn't afford to risk it because we might lose the conversation. We might be convinced that it's absolutely insane to run off into the desert in no man's land without any supplies, without any possibility for safety. It doesn't make sense. And so we just ran. That was iskafia. We just had to push ourselves to do the right thing. Today's geula, the final geula, is like ishapcha. We are bringing our entire self on board. It's been a long process. And I think we can all relate much more to iskafia. We relate because today we understand, I think even our nefesh Bahamas understands, our animal self, our human dimension understands that true comfort and pleasure is only in Hashem. Even the secular world understands that we need Hashem in our lives to help us feel sanity and security and inner peace. So that's ishapcha. There's complete transformation. We are bringing our entire self on board with the mission of living in alignment with Hashem. There's nothing about ourselves that is being left behind. We're not just running away from our inner resistance. We're transforming our inner self. Our hearts are much more aligned with Hashem than any previous generation. Nobody in previous generations had the possibility to deal with emotions the way we do. That's our work. We're deep into Geula, which is complete as Hapcha. So these two parts collectively, we do individually on a personal level, we do every single day. We do resisting, running away from our resistance, or rather defying our inner resistance, and then transforming our inner resistance into a force that comes along with us, that actually energizes us. We do that every day. But collectively, we did, Galus Mitzrayim was what represents, Ki Barach Ha'am represents defying our inner resistance, and Geula Ha'asida, the Geula that we have, that we are going into right now, represents complete and utter transformation. Now, between these two things, it might seem, this is the juiciest part of the Maimar, and this is almost the end. It might seem that within these two things, within these two ways of dealing with our inner resistance, the second one is a much more elevated, it's definitely much more developed, a much more developed form of dealing with our inner resistance. It accomplishes so much more. It brings us to a higher state of energy, of passion, of forcefulness in doing the right thing, of demonstrating Hashem's kingship in the world. But there's something precious about the first one that is so precious that we want to hold on to it, and we want to hold on to it even when Mashiach comes. We're going to want to hold on to it. And what is that? The Tanya teaches us that the difference between an active Oived Hashem, someone who is actively serving Hashem, and someone who is not serving Hashem, the difference is it's all about the struggle. It's all about pushing past the inner resistance. Ishapcha is there's no struggle. You already brought yourself on board. You have that inner clarity. You just have to turn it on. When you hear that inner resistance, it's like, let me remind you. And then it's like, oh, right. And we get fully on board. Iskafia is when you really have to change. You really have to defy yourself. You really have to stretch past your comfort zone. That's Iskafia. But that is what makes us an Oved Hashem. That is where, there's something very precious about that. Just the fact that we need to stretch past our inner resistance, doing that work, even an inch, means we are serving Hashem with much greater force. The Zohar tells us that every split second in which we push past our inner resistance to our neshama's expression, every split second causes a tremendous outpouring of Hashem's awesome light in all of the spiritual worlds. The expression of that is Istalik Yikra de Kuchabrichu Bechulu Alman, right? The tremendous outpouring of Hashem's light in all the worlds. And then the Maimar continues with another analogy, which is so beautiful. He says, Iskafia is like a battlefield. Ishapcha, transformation, is already, all is good. There's no battle. Iskafia is when you're actively engaged in battle. You're pushing past that resistance. You're defying it. You're fighting it by ignoring it, but pushing past it. But that takes a lot of force. It's like, boom, I'm going to do this, right? Only in the battlefield. When a king is at war, what does the king do? There's an expression, mivazvez bizbuz ha'aitzris. There's bizbuz is like a wasting of like a total dispensal of all the treasures. The king so badly wants to win the war. He wants to win the war more than he wants to own a treasury filled with precious jewelry and precious, all his precious gems and all the treasures that he owns. He wants to win the war more than he wants to own his treasures. So in order to aid the war effort, he gives everything he has, his deepest treasures, the energies, the treasures that he would never give. During peace, they're stored away, sealed away, far from where any eye can even see. During a wartime, take it, go and win. And that's the analogy, the Maimar says, that's the analogy that when we are in that moment of we really cannot do this, and I can't do this, and I can't do this, and I'm not in the mood, and I can't see myself doing what's right. If we get ourselves for one split second to do what's right, First of all, there's a tremendous outpouring of spiritual light in all the worlds that's so precious that we're gonna want to hold on to it when Mashiach comes. That preciousness, and we are. We're gonna take it along with us into Geula. It's gonna light our way into Geula. But also, this is so beautiful to know that as we're standing there in that moment of conflict, in that moment of not freedom, we're not feeling free because we feel so much resistance. It's so awesome to know that at that moment, Hashem is giving us his deepest energies, his deepest strength. And Hashem is saying, go, take my strength, hold on to me tight, and go win. Go do this. Go push yourself. Go, turn the channel. Don't, instead of reading that news that you know is going to give you anxiety, turn it to something meaningful. Instead of listening to that senseless, talk show, tune into a Torah class. Instead of eating, take a walk, do exercise, call a friend. There's so much, just do it. Push yourself to do it. Don't wait. Don't wait till you feel like it. Don't wait till you bring on board your whole inner resistance. At that moment, when we push ourselves into doing that, we're going above our nature. And the words are so beautiful here. Nesinas ha'itzer lahem. The treasure that Hashem gives us is in a manner of bizbuz. It's in a manner of wasting, like just total, unlimited, senseless giving. Lamaila mikol medida b'hagbala, way beyond any measurement and limitation. There's no boundaries. Hashem is giving us his all. And according to this, now we can understand why we mentioned Yemei Tzeischam Eretz Yisrael, our inner neflis. Why are we bringing along? Why are we mentioning Geula is going to be so much better? Geula is going to be so much more fantastic than Geula of Mitzrayim. Why are we even remembering it? Because there's something so precious about this work of pushing past our inner resistance. We're going to want to remember it, and we're going to want to hold on to it, even when Mashiach comes. And we will be holding on to these precious moments when we're receiving Hashem's support to push past our inner resistance and trying to be free. Woohoo! We did Mimer in an hour. Yay. Okay. Let's do questions, conversation. I'm gonna go to the chat. If anyone has questions, you feel free to unmute yourself. We want to have that advantage. We will want, even when Mashiach comes, we will want to have that advantage of this light and this energy. We won't be able to have it because there will not be any resistance. So we're going to want to remember it. We're going to want to hold on to it in our minds and in our emotionally, spiritually, even though we won't have it, we will no longer have that unleashing of that light, but we're going to treasure it like a memento. This is like our victory trophy that we have, like a memento of the past. Like, you take a picture of a moment because you want to remember it, you want to treasure it. We're going to want to take this along. And I think that's so validating and so refreshing to know that this moment of resistance is something it's giving me something, and it's accomplishing something so precious that it will mean something forever. There's meaning in this. There's a purpose. You know what? It's as I was learning it this morning, when I came to this part, I literally was crying because it's an unbelievable thing. We're still in Gullus. It's a terrible thing that we're still in Gullus. We cannot wrap our minds around it. We shouldn't be struggling right now. It's enough. We really should be in Geula. We're done. It's like, how much longer could we push ourselves? And everyone, I look around at the Avos Yisrael of the Shluchim in Ukraine, the selflessness that they just displayed in saving Jewish people one by one, their brothers and sisters, saving lives literally and risking their lives. It's just like, if this didn't bring Mashiach, like, what is going to bring Mashiach? And I look at people who have so much pain and literal suffering in their lives, and they wake up in the morning and they put their right foot in front of their left foot and they get out the door. And I'm like, Hashem, These people are miracles. Like, we are a miracle. If this is not gonna bring Mashiach, I don't know what is. This is amazing. So then when we have more challenges, it's like, really, Hashem? Like, really? So there's something very, very refreshing and comforting in knowing that we don't understand, but yes, there is something very precious in this very moment of my journey, of my story, where it's so difficult to push past that resistance. And I'm gonna do it anyway, because it'll be meaningful forever, even after Mashiach comes. Thank you for that question. Okay. Oh, I see there's more comments on the chat. Yes, someone wrote on the chat, this is beautiful. Someone says, what I'm taking out of this is that instead of berating myself for the fact that I struggle, I'm going to see the preciousness. Thank you for sharing that. It's so beautiful. If anybody else would like to share what you're taking away from this, that would be a gift to me and to everyone who's listening. If you can share a minute of your thoughts on what you're taking out of today, that would be amazing. And I'm going to give you a minute to think. And while you're thinking, I just want to share one other line from this mimer, which was incredibly meaningful to me. I hope I find it. Here it is. When the mimer is discussing today the challenges of Gullus and that resistance that we have to our freedom, to our soul being able to really be unleashed within our hearts, our minds, our bodies, and our relationships, and everything that we do. There's one line that is incredibly meaningful, and here's how it goes. It says, during the times of Gullus, and particularly in the last days of Gullus, when we're at the footsteps of Mashiach, the heels of Mashiach, there are many things holding us back, many obstacles and many, many challenges. And then the Rebbe says something which is unbelievable. He says, to the point that, in other words, before I say this line, I want to introduce it by saying something else. It's like my house was such a mess. Even the floor, the whole floor was covered with something, right? When you want to describe the epitome of a mess, what are you going to use to describe the mess? You're going to use the biggest mess of all. And here is something very fascinating. When we're talking about challenges, he says there are so many challenges, to the point that there's even the challenge of being embarrassed of other people who make fun of us. And I think that's so validating, because to us, you might think in previous generations, there were challenges of death, of destruction, of, physical threats. And to us, it is emotional threats. And here in this mimer, it's validating that, in the times of Gullus, there are so many challenges. There are obstacles and setbacks and many, many challenges. To the point that there's even the challenge of not getting, put off, not being embarrassed, not feeling ashamed of people who make fun of you. May I add, even the people in our own mind who make fun of us, our own voices, or the projection of other people's voices within our own inner critic. Okay, let's conclude. Please speak up. What you're saying is amazing. What you're saying is that when you do this, you feel Hashem coming through for you, which is, wow. I want to hear more. Thank you so much. Somebody asked a really good question. I want to answer this question. She says, forgive me for asking this, but is there any way you could encapsulate the main points of this whole talk? So let's do that. Let me give a 2-minute summary of everything that we just said. And I'm so glad you asked this question, because you're giving me the opportunity to do it. Okay. The Navi in Micha says, as in the days when we went out of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders. Why, if the Geula that we're about to experience is so much greater than the Geula of Mitzrayim, why are we even comparing it? And to understand this, we first need to understand how we're going to get to Geula in general. And how we're going to get to Geula in general. Geula is a complete revelation, a complete exposure, a demonstration of Hashem's power in this world, of the exclusivity of Hashem's power. And slavery, so that's freedom. That's freedom when we recognize the truth and we are in complete alignment with the truth. By contrast, slavery or gullus, exile, is when we feel we have the illusion of so many different powers. People have power, then we feel we must obey them. We must act according to please them. You know, we're afraid of their responses. We're afraid of what they think of us. We're afraid of what everyone is going to say. We feel dependent on substances. We feel compelled by our moods and by our habits. So that's the opposite of freedom. Geula, freedom, is when Hashem's kingship and the exclusivity of Hashem's power is so absolute that all our resistance to our deepest truth melts away. And we're free to express our deepest self in peace, in harmony, in love. And we can bring that courage and the dignity and the worthiness and the compassion. We can live with it, with ourselves, with other people, and in every situation that we encounter. So how do we do that? Two ways. First of all, every day, say Shema. Saying Shema is taking 30 seconds to connect with the truth of our freedom, the truth of the exclusivity of Hashem's power and the nothingness of every other power. That's Shema. Secondly, there's a two-step process. One is pushing past our resistance, and every single one of us needs to be able to do this in order to achieve freedom. Because the only strength of a habit is our belief that we must obey the habit. It's like we're prisoners, but we sit on the keys, right? We're sitting on the keys. Why are we sitting on the keys? Was because we believe that we can't. It's, you know, I've often told the story of the elephant who was tied as a child, was tied as an infant. The elephant was tied to a tree with a string. And then growing up, the elephant believed it could never resist. So we each have these beliefs. We believe we cannot defy our habits. In actuality, we could. The only way we could is if we do it. We have to do it in order to prove to ourselves that we cannot do it. Don't say I can't do it. Prove it to yourself. Do it, and that will be the proof that you can. You get courage by acting with courage. You get dignity by acting with dignity. Or like Leslie says, just pushing yourself to do that right thing, and then the energy flows. So that's the first thing, is iskafia, pushing past the resistance and doing the right thing. And we have to do that every single morning. Every single morning, we start off the day with a whole new level of inner resistance. 100 reasons why we should stay in bed and not even try to get our day started. 101 reasons why we should stay in bed and not even get our day started. Okay, that's the first thing. We start off our day with iskafia, to get past that inner resistance to waking up in the morning. The second thing is hapcha, where we are able, in a calm way, in a loving way, in a compassionate way, bring our inner resistance on board, transform ourselves into somebody who really is aligned with Hashem. I really believe that that getting out of bed on time is good for me, right? I really believe that staying away from candy, sugar, and cake is going to be in my best interest, and I don't have to fight it. I just do it. I'm in that flow. I'm in that energy. It's like a level of peace. And we said that obviously the second stage seems so much more developed, so much more, lofty, so much more secure, so much more complete. And that's kind of where we all want to be. But the truth is that we say, when Mashiach comes, we're going to want to remember these special times when we had to defy, when we had to do iskafia, when we had to really push ourselves. Why are we going to want to remember it? Because of two things. What were the two things? Remind me. One was Istalik Yikra de Kuchavicha V'chula Alman, the words of the Zohar, that every split second in which we push past our inner resistance, Every second when we go out of our comfort zone to do the right thing, there's a tremendous outpouring of Hashem's light in all the worlds. Number two is, it's like just like a king gives his greatest treasures to the soldiers who are on the battlefront fighting that intense battle, because the king really wants his soldiers to win that war. Hashem gives each of us his deepest energies, his deepest strengths to each and every one of us, so that we can win our personal battles with our own inner demons, with our own inner monsters, with our own inner parais, slave drivers. Hashem is giving us the power to overcome them. And because of the preciousness of what Hashem is giving us, that Hashem does not give this to a tzaddik, and Hashem will not give it to us anymore when Mashiach comes. We want to take snapshots of this. We want to remember it. We want to hold on to it, because when Mashiach comes, we're going to look back and say at this and say, we are holding on to this. This is a treasure. We're going to tell our children about it. We're going to tell our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. This is what we have. Hashem gave us so much light, because actually when Mashiach comes, we're going to see that light. Now we're in the dark. We're going to see it. My father tells me, in the olden days, in the 1980s, we used to have something called a fuse that used to blow. Now it's just a switch. But in the olden days, it was like a kind of little bulb that you had to screw into the box, to the electricity box. And it was always in the basement. So whenever the fuse blew, we had to run down to the basement. Right? And you put on the fuse and you had to say, is it on? And you scream up to the 3 flights of stairs, is it on? Is it on? And right? So my father told me that, like he said, the person in the basement putting on the fuse, they don't see all the lights going on. They come upstairs, they're going to see it. When Mashiach comes, we are now, every time we do a mitzvah, every time we push past that inner resistance to do the right thing, to get out of bed in the morning, to flip over from a silly novel to a book of Tehillim. Not that sometimes, consciously it's good to read a novel and relax. I'm not putting that down, but everybody knows when it becomes destructive, to read to listen to a Torah class instead of to a talk show that breeds anxiety and just fills our minds and attaches us, grounds us in negativity, to something holy and that elevates us into positivity, into positive spiritual energy. Like every time we do that, we are turning on a light. We're turning on another light and turning on another light and turning on another light. Just putting our right foot in front of our left foot and showing up to the day is already doing the right thing. And when Mashiach comes, we're going to see all those lights and we're going to want to hold on to them. We're going to say, see that light? That's the one. That's the one. I think that in every moment we could either be part of the problem or part of the solution. We could be perpetuating the galus, or we could be bringing the geula. But I don't think it's helpful on any level to think about that. I'll tell you why. Because that is the voice that sounds to me very sneaky, like a sneaky Yetzer Hara saying, criticizing you and putting you down, which can never lead to anything good. So I would say focus on the good, focus on the light. And none of us are perfect. None of us are always going to do the right thing every single time. We all slip, we all make mistakes. And the strength that we have is in getting up and doing this moment with greater strength. So don't look back at your mistakes. I try not, we shouldn't do that. It's not helpful. It's destructive. And could we make mistakes? Yeah, we could make mistakes. Do we want to make mistakes? No, we don't, but we will. If we would never experience darkness, if we would never experience a struggle, and it would never be possible to fall, then what would our winning be worth? Anyways, thank you everybody for joining. Happy cleaning. Every day, let's bake a matzah. And baking a matzah is absorbing Hashem's presence. Maidani, and now we have this mimer saying Shema, which really sets us free of other powers, even the powers within the power within our own selves. And we should be zeicha to have Mashiach this year, this Pesach. We should really be free. Amen. We should really be free, the ultimate freedom with Mashiach, because we could only do so much. Hashem has to do the rest. Hashem has to take us to the finish line. And really, I can't wait to see all of you in the Beis Hamikdash. And we're going to farbrang. We're going to have such a good time. We're going to dance. We're going to sing. We're going to rejoice in the Geula. Sisters who struggled turned on so many lights and really did our best. We're really gonna relish that moment when Mashiach comes, and I cannot wait to celebrate with you. And I'm also looking forward to restarting our book discussion. We're gonna start from part 2, Emet Hashem, during Cheiruseinu. I'm really looking forward to that. So stay tuned. Chag Sameach. Aziz and Pesach, a kosher and prayer from Pesach.